This is Claire Forges having a go at the Black Lives Matter and others in a very convoluted and racist piece. We shall be talking about this more, and I go back to the intervention. That is a phrase that she has used, but she has used it in a different context and different way. I intervened to defend the parent governors, and the community around Stratford School in 1992 against the racist regime that was in that school operating under Anne Snelling, the head teacher. And Snelling then got supported by then Tory Education Secretary, that is Cabinet Minister for Education, or at the expense of education in the UK at the time, Kenneth Clarke. And Kenneth Clarke was as stupid as were the rest of them that actually began to brief the mainstream media against my role. And my role was to keep the school democratic and accessible and accountable, open to accountability by the parents and the community. They wanted to make it non-secular and identify the parents by their religion and faith. And they wanted to smear the whole campaign. And they foisted even an agent of the now reverted Cat Stevens. Cat Stevens was at the height of his posture as a Muslim at the time. And he sent a very heavily Scottish accented moron who tried to say that the school dispute at Stratford was about Muslims and non-Muslims. And I told him to get lost. And I think he did get lost. But the point is that what I did and what I'm still doing is not being followed by the mainstream. Not mentioned. I don't need them to mention, but they need to follow the example I'm setting every day. And the example I set at the Stratford School was to keep the agenda within the secular administrative arrangement, not to make it based on religion or ethnicity or faith. But they wanted to paint it as faith and ethnicity. So the mainstream idiocies, like the Claire Forges of this world, are perpetuating racism and ignorance and allowing the likes of Boris Johnson and others to condemn legitimate action against discrimination, against racism, as being unfair, over the top, and un-British. And she's giving an example about the cathedral. The cathedral, she is talking about the cathedral experiment in Sheffield. She says, for instance, it was revealed that Sheffield Cathedral would disband its choir to start a new one that reflects to the mixed urban community in which we live and work. The clear discrimination against white choristers enraged people. Madness like this has made diversity itself a dirty word, and so on. But obviously, Claire Forges is going to hear from this campaign, and I'm going to ask her questions to justify and explain in detail. And I'm saying this on the record here. I'm going to communicate to her today. But she doesn't know about the existence of the racist criminal setup controlling the decisions and the roles of the court system. There is no court in this country, civil or criminal, in the jurisdictional terms, that can be relied on to get remedies against racism and discrimination. And I said a few editions earlier, no racist footballer or racist woman, and I'm saying that on the record, on the evidence, has been found guilty of racism even when prosecuted. What does it say? It says that all the black people, African people, and Asian people who are victims and targets of racism are liars, and they're making it up. So Claire Forges has to come back to reality and stop her racist fantasy and opportunistic bandwagonism, and say that she knows racism exists and that she knows about the court system, and that all of this needs to be made anti-racist in their behavior so that there is no need for token quotas anywhere. If the umpire in a football kind of club or football match behaves with prejudice and discrimination, then where do the victims of racism there go for redress? And it applies everywhere, at every stage. Everywhere, every stage, there has to be equality of action, equality of treatment. That rules out, therefore, the need for special appointment based on ethnicity or gender or whatever. So that is the Times, and the Times has got a letters page on page 26, and I'll read the names. The people whose names are there in the first letter, these are (100) signatories have been represented by this letter about the new guidance on managing pain, and there is a name called Sam H. Ahmedzai. So that sounds like from Iran or the Middle East. And then Arun Bhaskar, that sounds Indian. There is Rajesh Mangulani, who is a consultant, looks like an Indian name. But apart from that letter, the names are James Keeley, Paul Brown, John Barstow, John Barstow, Roger Grave, sounds familiar, Tony Wilson, David Sinclair, Nabil White, Hamish Allen, Peter Jones, David Krelling, F.W. Nunnally, and David Landine, then Edmund Cargill Thompson, Louise Tyler, Robin Cooper, that is the Jewish name, Reuben Cooper. So all these letters are European names, except the one about the health, which is by definition, if it is 150 signatures, then it has to have some Asian and African names. And the Times has no information about the housing crisis and poverty and migration or the wars going on, the genocides going on in Africa and Asia. And here is a celebration of the right-wing racist brigade. It's Tory MP's wife's diary, Sasha Swire, tell-all account of chillaxing with the Cameron chamocracy and so forth. So there is no emergency, there is no kind of crisis in this country in the government, and there is no investigation into the history of breaking laws by the UK and breaking the kind of conventions, treaties, charters, agreements, and declarations. And Andrew Lloyd Webber is being given a platform as the lone person in his quest to bring back theatre. And theatre is dying, he's saying. And we shall not be talking too much about that line, because his theatre, Andrew Lloyd Webber is a multimillionaire, as have been others. He is white, and he has not produced one single action theatre that addresses the reality of the society of the last 80 years or 100 years. So what is he talking about? What theatre is he talking about? He's talking about a diversion away from reality and the denial of the reality of this society. And as I said, the rebellion by Jeffrey Cox is a false rebellion. And there is a shocking item here in the Times. Whatever next? They're saying defiant doctors prescribe homeopathy. Now, homeopathy has been one of the targets of the racist hostility in Britain towards anything alternative to the status quo in terms of, quote, medicine. Doctors prescribed homeopathic medicine more than 2,000 times last year at cost to the NHS England of £46,000, despite it being marked to be blacklisted. GPs apparently ignored 2017 warning not to prescribe homeopathic treatment, which Sir Simon Stevens, the NHS chief executive, said was at best a placebo and a misuse of scarce funds. Health chief said last year that they would ask the government to formally blacklist homeopathy, but this has not been made law. So that is an issue that warrants longer discussion. But essentially, it is symptomatic of the kind of unfitness and dysfunctionality and the pandemonium which I have ascribed to the Boris Johnson fronted regime, but it is longer kind of ranging than Boris Johnson has been imposed. And then there is this other thing that is admitting that the UK is murdering animals and wildlife and the birds, contrary to conventions and treaties and agreements and declarations. So breaking the law, breaking the treaties, breaking the agreements, breaking the conventions is not really something that is new on the part of the British governments. And Boris Johnson is not the first one. Of course, the range and the number, the kind of extent of his law breaking is, of course, different. But in principle, breaking the law and breaking the treaties and conventions has been part of the British tradition. And there is an admission about the BBC corruption. BBC boss will make moonlighting stars declare money from sidelines. So that means that has been going on for a long time. So now, if they are moonlighting, then whatever they say, can that be believed? For example, what Jeremy Paxman said in 2010 when he was interviewing Christopher Hitchens was full of direct, hateful contempt against Muslims and incitement against Muslims. He asked Christopher Hitchens what he thought about Islamofascists. Even Hitchens did not repeat that. It was that bad. What did Jeremy Paxman think he was playing at? Islamofascist. He didn't use fascist and another faith's name in one word or in one sentence, other than in referring to Muslims. And where does he or did he get the evidence? So this is a diagnosis of the BBC as well, and asking the BBC, which has been replaying that video of Paxman's meeting Christopher Hitchens, to withdraw that video and to apologize and to terminate the contract with Jeremy Paxman. Whatever residual contracts remain. What would Claire Forges say to that? I'm going to ask her later today about that. And the Daily Express is absolutely lunatic. It is diverting. It's looking for any diversionary excuse to give Boris Johnson a break. So this is an excuse saying that too much attention on fighting the virus is affecting other causes, other medical causes or duties. That is not what the proportion of the resources being given actually warrant or justify, but that is what the line is, that the Beaverbrook's scandalous legacy of lying is asking the gullibles to believe in. And they've got this promotion for Kate Blanchett. And they're blaming, in this piece, coronavirus, the hidden health crisis, they're blaming any resource being put to fighting the virus for the loss of vital research into cancer. Why can't both be properly funded? That question is always ignored and denied and diverted from by the liars of the Express. And then there is this scandal. How did they manage to hide it for so long? The scandal of pensioners losing 2.2 billion pounds. How did they not know about this for as long as they have known about this and failed to report this or investigate this? And then we've got Ian Pissoff, dressed as a kind of policeman. This is the policeman who looks like Ian Pissoff, but it's not Pissoff actually. I have been spat at, kicked, punched, threatened with a knife and a gun. That's the attack on the police increasing, it says. And it says that that kind of attack must stop. Now, the question is, how did this come to this? Why has there been a vacuum of information, education about the police, about the duty of the police and the attitude towards the police and the role of the police? And there is the Hattie Harman's advisor, the racist Leo McKinstry, has got a space on the Express now, and he's saying something that is quite obvious. He says that deal with the crime with the law that we have already, instead of enacting new laws. And then there is a piece by Matt Nixon about Peter Snow. History in the making. Peter Snow on the treasures that tell us who we are. And here is the clue. None of these building blocks of civilization are on social media. Well, most of society and the truth about society and truth about Britain and the British public and British people and the history are not on social media either, and not on the mainstream media like the Daily Express either. So, what's different between the mainstream and the social media that the Express is having a go at? Only when the social media is seen to be exposing some of the rank, brazen corruption and illegality. And there is this Daily Mirror got back to talking about the virus on the front page again after indulging in the last few days in spewing ignorance for the footballers and other diversions. And there is a new word they have created here, which I have seen for the first time here in the on page 2 of the Mirror of Monday, the 14th of September 2020. That's Brextreme pressure. That is, Boris Johnson is under pressure from John Major and Tony Blair, etc. And there is a 2-page spread about the fears expressed by doctors who want a kind of efficient carrying out of tests, or else the crisis will get out of hand and out of control. The question is that the Daily Mirror is repeating a line. It's not reporting the truth on the grounds and the behavior of local councils, local authorities, local agencies. And the so-called associate editor or editorial kind of platform occupant, Kevin McGuire, writes a typically trendy piece at the expense of Boris Johnson, whom he calls a tyrant. But Kevin McGuire is as much at fault as the rest of the Mirror in allowing Boris Johnson to be in the occupation of the number 10 position, because they, Kevin McGuire, formed part of the demonizing brigade going on every day against Jeremy Corbyn. And Jeremy Corbyn was so completely discredited in the eye of the ordinary people because of this propaganda by the likes of Kevin McGuire and their masters, that even if he adopted a magic formula at the very last minute, he would have lost the election. So my analysis goes back to he should have said no to the election, and he should have stuck to the new law that Cameron had enacted with a fixed term parliament. And he should have said no, and he would have been lawfully, validly justified. And the I newspaper is running the same story that the virus must be tackled. And they've got an accurate piece about the statement by the EU negotiator and his team, telling Boris Johnson to stick to the facts, which is exactly what Boris Johnson doesn't want to do that. And the rest of the I newspaper is covered in itsy bitsy typical things that are not really talking about the evidence or the facts on the ground. They talk about Barnier's facts, but they don't give the facts about what is happening across the country, in communities, in the schools, and in the courts, where there will be a mad rush to rubber stamp the eviction applications and make hundreds of thousands of people homeless and rob them of their homes. And the Daily Star has got the headline about sick as a parrot, which is the COVID infection that has affected a parrot. Well, that is quite catchy, but in the inside pages, there is no report, there is no journalism, there is no evidence, there is no fact about anything that affects the people and the people's safety and the livelihood and security. And there is a promotion, travel promotion on the front page. There is a pop person promoted, and there is Brenda the Queen, and of course Priti Patel being promoted on the front page. And there is no sign of any problem in this country at all. But on page 2, lest they be forgotten, they have a go at Michel Barnier and the EU for Boris Johnson illegality. And they are celebrating the fun-loving criminals. Look at the images and look at the backgrounds and look at the idea of a kind of economic position of these people. So the fun-loving criminals it's not really as harsh as it should be. And it's not something that Priti Patel would say if there were migrants or refugees or Asians or Africans. Not that I'm advocating that, but that is what the difference is. And this sick man, Trevor Kavanagh, terrible Kavanagh, is an abominable hate preacher. And he's always spewing hatred against the EU, against anti-racists, against Democrats, against campaigners against poverty, against campaigners for democracy. And they are using an obscene excuse to call Boris Johnson the Baptist. This liar, this serial racist inciter and hate preacher is being elevated to the once she is out of the BBC, they're okay giving Stephanie McGovern a normal kind of celebrity promotion. While she was on the BBC, they wouldn't do that because Murdoch has got an agenda against the idea of a public service broadcast network. And they're full of other typical pornographic stuff. So we are going to continue with the Daily Boris Graph and the Daily Mail and the Financial Times in the next part of the diagnosis of Fleet Street today, Monday, the 14th of September, 2020. So this is ending at just after 11 minutes after 9 GMT on Monday, the 14th of September, 2020.